Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have some vintage from Scholars Games in Brockton, Massachusetts, part of their monthly vintage series. And I am on Dredge here on the left side versus Joe on Oath. Definitely the type of matchup that you can expect to see at larger events, both Dredge and Oath. Very strong contenders in this metagame. Oath is, to a lot of people's perspective, an excellent trump to the Workshop Menace, being able to come over the top of the horde of little robots with a card like Gristlebrand, and then comboing out. And of course, the colors of Oath, very friendly towards controlling the board against Workshops. You have access to most of the best cards in terms of Hurkyl's Recall, Nature's Claims. Really no shortage of ways of handling artifacts in blue and green. And Forbidden Orchard does allow you to play pretty much whatever you want in terms of colors. Aside from being an Oath enabler, it also does fix your mana base quite nicely. Game 1, Oath definitely gonna want a solid hand. Try and beat Dredge. And it does generally take an exceptional draw. And part of the reason for that is Dredge is able to kind of wait and then combo out. It doesn't have to commit to the board too early. And it can kind of create an Alpha Strike scenario backed up by Cabal Therapies and Dread Return for the win. Of course, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble dredging in cards like Narcomoeba and really just getting a 1-1 and potentially costing yourself the game, because Oath doesn't always have the Orchard. But in this case, Joe does in fact have an Orchard, so if he draws Oath of Druids, he will be able to force the issue. Kind of setting that clock, so going to go ahead and play full speed ahead here. Discarding 3 cards. Narcomoeba is going to be able to come in. In Joe's hand, he does have an Oath of Druids. More Narcomoebas. Dakmor Salvage also spotted there. That's your enabler for Bloodghast, for those unfamiliar with the list. Dakmor Salvage dredges for 2, and most importantly, kind of gives you access to your Bloodghast at all times. Anytime you go to draw a card, you can just dredge that back instead, giving you a very kind of consistent way to get those Bloodghasts aside from sandbagging lands in your hand. Undiscovered Paradise also very good at that, being able to return, repeatedly trigger landfall. And we've got Cabal Therapy being flash-backed. That got a mental misstep. And the second time around, Cabal Therapy cast from hand. And this one is going to be responded to by Vamp Tutor, which is pretty much the worst case scenario. Discard, a very powerful way of interacting with your opponent in Vintage. However, those top deck tutors really do create some problems for a discard strategy when you're unable to fight on the stack as well. So even though this Vampiric Tutor is card disadvantage in the fact that Joe is down a card from hand, he's actually much happier with that card being on top of his library, where it's safe from the flashback Cabal Therapy. So hitting Oath of Druids, got 1 card on top of his library that he Vampiric Tutored for. Now if that's Black Lotus, Joe is going to be able to Yogg Will and replay that Oath. Looks like he's got a turn. Oh, it looks like he drew his card for turn and passed. Oh, having vamped for a land. So that Oath of Druids getting stripped out of his hand, a huge problem there. Perhaps not the best line there with the Vampiric Tutor, certainly with all of the information watching in retrospect. Lotus could have been a much stronger line, allowing him to potentially replay the Ogwill and the Oath of Druids. And for sideboarding here, gonna need Nature's Claim. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not only is it likely that Oath is gonna have some other onboard problems for you, ranging from cards like Leyline of the Void to Hormod's Crypt or Nile Spellbomb, but you've also got, of course, worry about the titular card Oath of Druids. That card can end the game very quickly when combined with Forbidden Orchard or just creatures that Dredge happens to have put into the battlefield. Hollow One, a very strong sideboard option along with Gurmag Angler, and that's changed the face of Dredge quite a bit. Now, instead of having to absolutely answer any type of graveyard hate in order to move on with your path to victory, now you're actually able to get 4/4s into play for no mana, thanks to discarding 3 cards off of Bazaar, or go ahead and delve Gurmag Angler in. Just so happens that he takes 6 cards in order to delve him in, and that can be done even without dredging, just by activating Bazaar twice. So in those post-board games, Bazaar Baghdad really functioning as a filtering engine to be able to dig to try and find those cards that you actually want in your hand, because there are a few of them post-board. Pretty much anything you're sideboarding in is something you're going to want to cast from hand, whereas the rest of the deck, pretty much all better off in the graveyard. Here it looks like a hand without a Bazaar. That'll not do. Even though it does have Unmask. Really not enough there. As soon as Joe makes the call, Dredge pitching the hand back. For those not totally accustomed to the mulligan procedure in tournament Magic, your opponent, whoever is going to be on the play, is the one that actually has to decide whether or not they're keeping their hand first or not. A lot of times people kind of shortcut that and just kind of mulligan at will, but realistically, to have the kind of the best percentage points there, what you actually want to do is just allow that first person to make the call. And you know, if you are mulliganing and your opponent is on the edge, that may influence them one way or another. If you're going to mull, then they might as well mull. Generally, the least information, the better for your opponent. Leading out with Leyline of the Void and a Gataxian Probe, sees the Bazaar along with the Hollow One. So this is going to be a pretty solid start, even though Leyline of the Void's in play. Bazaar is going to be able to dig towards some of that enchantment removal. Losing 3 cards there to the Leyline. Hollow One coming down. Oh, but an answer for the Bazaar there from Joe in Strip Mine. He's going to go ahead and get out Time Vault. So 5 damage clock here, 4 turns to go. Bloodghast could potentially decrease that clock by a little bit with another land drop. Could have just 2 more turns. Let's see here. 5 goes to 8, goes to 7. So actually, no, Bloodghast does not decrease the clock, but that Spirit Token complicates things. Oh, and Demonic Tutor here. Pretty clear-cut choice this time around. With Time Vault in play, he's going to grab Voltaic Key. No mana floating to untap. 7 damage coming in, putting him to 6. The Bloodcast could have been cast there, would not have had haste, as Joe was not below 10 life. But it looks like this game is going to be over here with infinite turns. So this game essentially over. All Joe needs to find is some type of win condition. And we see Jace in hand, so we'll see what type of information he's going to give us. Jace can win the game by picking up and ultimating. That would take my hand, make it my new library, and then ultimate again, and that would replace my library with a empty hand, and then he could pass. So Jace, the Mind Sculptor, definitely a viable win condition, but instead he actually uses the Oath of Druids and finds Sphinx of the Steelwind, which is an unusual oath target, was actually quite popular back in the day. If you can believe, it was actually the default Tinker target for quite some time. Sphinx of the Steelwind can hold off a whole herd of Tarmogoyfs and other aggro creatures. Very, very difficult to win on the ground through a Sphinx of the Steelwind. The first strike and lifelink and vigilance. I mean, there's a lot going on with that card. A lot of extra text, and all of it adds up to being a very solid board control card. So Joe earning game 2 there off of Vault Key. And that is one of the combos that that Dredge at least has a reasonable chance of interacting with. Both Nature's Claim and Ingot Chewer can break up that combo. Of course, Ingot Chewer does it at sorcery speed, which means if Joe is able to get Vault Key down in the same turn, then there's less that Ingot Chewer can do there. Of course, to do that, he may have to keep those cards in his hand, which is not a safe place against Dredge, having access to both Cabal Therapy and Unmask. And we've got Serum Powder here with a couple of Ingot Chewers. And another Serum Powder at 7, so 14 cards out of the deck. What very often happens... Oh, and now going to 6. What very often happens after a couple of Serum Powders like that is you end up with a double Bazaar hand way more often. Either just having 2 Bazaars in your opener, or just drawing into more Bazaars once you found your Bazaar. Taking a quarter of the deck out, a pretty significant kind of statistical modifier. Really mulling deep here, trying to find that Bazaar. This is the double-edged sword of the deck. 5 here, no good. Unmask, that's something, but it's really not enough. The deck is going to need Bazaar to move forward, even in the post-board games. That is not going to do. I'm going to go ahead and take a pile shuffle here. Going down to 3. Going to be willing to go to 1 if necessary. Have mulled to 1 multiple times with this deck over the years. I've actually hit Bazaar off of it. I've drawn Bazaar for turn. You are certainly not favored when you are mulliganing to 1, but I have managed to win games from there. And it's certainly a heck of a lot better than just hanging out at 2 useless cards, getting that extra card draw. Really maximizing your chance hitting Bazaar. Here we go. Mulling to 3. Looks like Joe may have stepped away from the table for a minute. While that's happening, go ahead and thank Scholars for hosting another awesome vintage event. There will be several throughout the year. We actually have a legacy event coming up this Saturday, April 28th. Looking forward to that. Not sure what I'm going to be playing on that. Here we see another Serum Powder coming off the top. And going to 2 now, having exiled an additional 3 cards. Bazaar is just hiding out in the deck. A hollow one and a Bloodghast. No good there. Could possibly make an argument for keeping that hand just because if Bazaar's on top, you still lead out with hollow one. But it looks like Joe here opening on a show and tell for Gristlebrand right off the bat. Tolarian Academy powered by some Moxes. And passing the turn back Gristlebrand facing down that hollow one. Definitely the trump creature here. 3 swings from Gristlebrand likely going to be enough to just punch this game right out of range. We'll see what Joe decides to do here. Getting Voltaic Key, powering up that Tolarian Academy, having a fistful of cards here, including Force of Will. And he's got a Jace the Mind Sculptor. That bounces hollow one. And it looks like that was a Lotus being sacrificed in order to cast Leyline of the Void. So things gone horribly awry here. Jace, Fate Sealing, leaving what appeared to be a Mana Confluence on top. And Gristlebrand just beating down. Should be turned sideways. But that's it. And Joe with Oath taking down Dredge. Congratulations to that. We'll see more of Joe later in the tournament. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.